on Facebook. So,
and it says on my end, this meeting is being live streamed, and I should hit got it. I guess I have to hit got it.
Yeah, you have to consent to this.
Okay.
No going back now. I'm gonna go ahead and no. What just happened?
I don't know.
Okay. Now I'm gonna hit the button. You're now live. Okay. Thanks for coming on, Dan. I'm gonna make sure that everything is rolling, though. I've had some technical issues in the past, so I want to make sure everything's actually rolling right now. It looks like it's going.
I got my coffee, got my water. I'm fine.
Great. That's great. Yeah, it's going on Facebook. Verify that it's on YouTube as well. Yep, looks like it's there. I know my Aunt Mary, Mary Vick, is tuning in on YouTube, so wanted to make sure that was rolling as well.
Yeah.
All right, I think it's working. So thanks so much, Dan. We'll let some people kind of trickle in as we're sort of getting started here. I'll keep an eye on comments. People, let me know if you can see everything, if it sounds good. This, of course, is Dan Karnes, who is with me today. And I've known Dan for a long time. We attend the same church, Vancouver Apostolic Lutheran Church, and actually related to his wife as well. So
yes,
I think she's my mom, Elizabeth's first cousin, right?
First cousin, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. So let some people kind of come in here. It looks like there is a comment. Linda Workla says hello.
Hello. Hi, Linda.
Cool. Make sure I have all of my notes up and ready to go. So this is gonna be fun. It's we have a lot of ground to cover. And you did send me some photos. Thank you for sending those over. Yeah. We'll look through those as we get a little deeper into it. But Dan, first off, let's start with whose boy are you? Let's start with that. Like, who are your parents and where did you grow up?
Okay, yeah, I was born on Mother's Day in 1948. Truman was president, and you got to look that up if you don't know who Truman is. And in Little Falls, Minnesota, the home of Lindbergh, the famous aviator, and my parents were Marie and Willard Karnes. And when my story starts, it mostly starts up in the Iron Range in Minnesota. Dad moved up after the Navy and getting out of World War II, and so we moved up north to follow the mines and maybe get a job. So you were a true baby boomer. Not long. Do you have siblings? Yes, I'm one of 7 kids. Number 2. Okay. There's 4 of us left. Okay. Very cool. And so you grew up in Upper Michigan? No, Grand Rapids, Minnesota. Grand Rapids. Okay. It's halfway between Bemidji and Duluth. Okay. And your early years, you went to high school there. What else did you do kind of in your early years there, Grand Rapids? Yeah, it was kind of a hard scrabble life. My dad was a seasonal miner, and we made do as best we could. So we're really poor. And so living out in the country, we lived in the area called Trout Lake, and that's where there's a little Finnish church that's about 3 miles away. That's where we started going. My mom was a German Lutheran, and Dad had not much religious background, but praise God, he was baptized by Ralph Davidson later in his life.
anyhow, life was tough. We kind of grew and gardens and pigs and chickens and things like that. That was a big part of our life. As kids, we never really did much outside of that. And so, so I was hoping that when I left high school in 1966, that I'd break the mold and I'd be the first in my family to go to college.
Yeah. You took an interesting path.
Interesting, for sure.
Yeah. Did you ever have a thought in your mind that you'd want to go mining like your dad?
Oh no, that was probably the last thing I wanted to do. Although a couple of my brothers did follow him in that, and mining did get a little easier as they built big taconite plants, and open pit mining wasn't such a big thing after a while. But I think Dad's premature death was probably could have been caused by his mining activity.
There certainly were. I mean, mining was dangerous, still is, honestly, to some degree.
The red dust was everywhere, and I'm sure it was all through his lungs and that,
Yep.
But he died of a brain cancer, actually.
Oh, okay. John Kinnanen says that the stream is good, and Carmel Wilson Helms says hello as well.
Hi,
I should also pay attention to the YouTube side of things to make sure that I'm not missing anything over there. So I have that up as well. What were they mining? It's called copper. Well, actually, that's UP. What were they mining at that point?
Yeah, there's iron ore. In Minnesota, there's 3 big ranges of iron ore, and that's the big thing there. Okay,
gotcha. Yeah, that'd be a hard life for sure. So you thought at some point, I mean, that you would go to college. Was there any influence on you as far as thinking you would go that direction?
That was really kind of strange, because I really had no idea what I wanted to do. Just this vague concept that I wanted to go to college, and I really enjoyed the outdoors. But I thought when I went to college, I thought I wanted to be a geographer, a map maker, or something like that. I started with no intention of ever being like an expert in the woods or anything. But that evolved.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. I think that's going to be a very interesting thing. So what was your first job?
That was on that one slide there. My first job was the first Monday after high school. Graduated in 1966. That first Monday, I started with the Neighborhood Youth Corps, which is a U.S. government program to put impoverished kids and that to work, give them some experience. And so that was really my start. And I was placed, of all things, at the Forest Experiment Station, and so. The thing that really grabs me, Jamon, is that throughout this whole thing, I had no idea, but I was following an unknown path, and looking back at it, every step of this long journey, as we start taking these steps, I can see how God had led me through that.
Yeah.
And
no kidding. So
I had no idea that this was all going to happen, but I got my first job. I wanted to get some job experience, and here it was, working for this scientific experiment station, and digging ditches and measuring outflows of water and nutrients and things in the watersheds of northern Minnesota.
That is interesting.
For minimum wage, which was at that time $1.25 an hour.
Boy, don't spend it all in one place, hey? Yeah. So so that was in summer of 1966. That was after you graduated, and then you did start college.
Right. Yeah. Right across on the same parcel of land was the University of Minnesota. agriculture experiment station too. And then part of that, there was a community college called Itasca Community College. And so I just basically went across the street and went to school.
Yeah.
In a junior
That's
college.
convenient.
It was, junior college. And so I just took, general subjects and the like, and still had no idea what I was doing, but just trying to get, because I was just an average student. So I wanted to make sure I could handle college and took some general classes.
What'd your parents think of you going to college like that, moving that direction?
Yeah, they were always, of course, they didn't have the money to support that, but I basically I was able to do it the way I did it without a lot of debt, and they're just extremely proud. They were proud.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that you were headed that direction. And then you continued to work at the North Central Forest Experiment Station during your junior college.
Through those years until I graduated in 1968 with an AA Associate of Arts degree, and then by that time the guys at the experiment station, they had taken me under the wing so much, and I enjoyed working outside. So so I started thinking about what I really wanted to do, and it became a passion to me to try to get a job in forestry.
Very cool. So forestry, so you were obviously involved in that experimentation or in experiment station, and then that became something that was sort of a path. So then you looked at the University of Minnesota at that point.
Yeah, at that point there was I wanted to go to a Big Ten school. Big Ten is Big Ten, and University of Minnesota is one of the best forestry schools in the nation. So I really wanted to go there. Plus the big thing was in-state fees instead of out-of-state fees.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big difference. Yeah.
So once I was accepted there, then one of the first things I had to do that very summer was to go to the Itasca Forestry Camp.
Yeah.
The University of Minnesota had a camp up by Lake Itasca, and all of us new forestry students coming in would go there for a month, and they would immerse us in all the tools of the trade. And
did you feel like you had kind of a leg up since you were already working at that station?
I felt comfortable. Yeah, I felt comfortable, not only in my growing up years as being outside and knowing how to handle myself in the woods, but also the fact that the experiment station had really prepared me for just about anything I wanted to do in natural resources. And these guys that I worked with were all PhDs for the most part.
Is that right?
So and
you felt like.
And they just embraced me. I'll never forget it. They just great.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, keep going.
The fact that North Central Experiment Station was a part of the Forest Service. It's the environmental brand of the Forest Service, and then also that the headquarters for North Central Forest Experiment Station was on the St. Paul campus of the University of Minnesota, where I was going to forestry school. So again, all I had to do is go across the street to work part-time during school.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that is very like you said, it's like you were kind of God was kind of like guiding you down a certain path, because it all just sort of came together. So you continued to go to the School of Forestry, which you have a note here that it's now the College of Natural Resources in St. Paul.
Yes.
And then you graduated with a BS degree in forestry.
Actually, I had on there
1971.
1971.
Yep. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. I think I wrote it wrong there. So
Yeah. So then you met your wife, Joyce, who was a candle, at the time
She was going
that summer?
She was going to the University of Minnesota School of Education on the Minneapolis campus, and there's a bus in between. And that probably was the greatest gift of all, was the fact that I met them. I was given, when I went down to the Twin Cities, I was given just one name to call and in the church to see if I could make some connections down there, and the guy's name was Jamon.
Oh, really? Jim? Yeah.
Yeah. Jim
who also attends our church.
Jim and Barb were newly wed.
So you go way back with Jim.
Way back. Yeah. They were young married, and so I'll never forget that. It was really put us together, and to be on, as we go through my journey here, to put up with the things Joyce has had to put up with. She is a real saint.
She seems pretty chill. I don't know her super well, but she seems to kind of just take life in stride.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah. And before we get too much further, how many kids do you have?
And 3 boys. Yeah, we ended up with 3 boys.
And you have how many grandkids?
Kevin and is the oldest, and John is next, and then Ryan. And there's how many kids do we have, Joyce? 8 grandkids.
8 grandkids. Okay. ask the candle memory for.
And then the 3 great grandkids.
Oh, you have great grandkids as well. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So so then you graduated. You were married that summer to Joyce, and that's when you it sounds like you finished working at the station and moved to a ranger district here. Can you talk about this?
Right. That was, well, the summer before we got married is an interesting summer job I had.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
North Central Forest Experiment Station. We were doing a vegetative study up in the Boundary Waters Canoe area. It's a million acres. And so my job was to work with other 2 people teams, and we would canoe back in the wilderness for 2 days to different spots, do a vegetation study, and then after 10 days on, we come back. And so a lot of portaging, a lot of just laying on the ground, sleeping type stuff. And it was really, the summer went by so fast because it was you're 10 days on, 4 days off, 10 days on, 4 days off. That's probably the only way I got through it, because I was missing Joyce like crazy. Yeah,
sure. Yeah. It went by fast. Now, when you say portaging, explain for not those of us not as
well. Familiar. You have these long canoes, and your packs and everything. You have to get it between the lakes, because the Boundary Waters is just a zillion lakes, and they're all connected by little pieces of land, and so that was the way to do it.
Okay. Yeah.
Carrying on top of your head, portaging.
Get a workout that way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So anyhow, we got married in Portland at Portland Church, the old one before it was eliminated, and so that summer, then I had to have a job. We weren't quite done with college at that point.
Okay.
We each had a quarter left or something like that. Yeah. And so at that point, I got a job with the Estacada Ranger District, Mount Hood National Forest, for the summer.
Okay.
Highland Slash.
Yeah.
That leads into the first one of the big fire stories.
Yeah. So I didn't realize that you were involved with forest fires, but that's what it says in the notes here. So I'm interested to hear.
Anyhow, that was quite a deal. We just got back from our Canadian honeymoon, and a week or 2 later, my boss says to bring an extra pair of pants because we might be gone overnight on a fire. 2 weeks later, I saw Joyce again, and the thing was, it was just incredible. I mean, this is my first fire, and it was a huge fire. We met. We were the Estacada crew, and we all met at the Troutdale Airport. They flew us from Troutdale to Wenatchee. And from Wenatchee, we got on a bus and took a bus ride to Chelan. From Chelan, we took a boat 30 miles up the lake, Lake Chelan. And from the end of that boat ride, we had a helicopter ride to our spike camp up in the mountains. And so, I mean, I got to see all that in my first fire, and it was quite a deal. And I didn't know we didn't have phones at that time, so I didn't even know how to let Joyce know I was okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I peeled some bark off this paper birch tree, and inside the paper birch bark, there's a real the cambium there is real easy to write on. And so I wrote a note to Joyce on this piece of paper birch, and I gave it to the helicopter pilot, and I gave him a quarter or something and said, "Could you mail it to my wife?" And she got it.
Yeah.
Through the mail, and she got my letter
on a paper birch. That's hilarious.
So that was really, really pretty cool.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, totally. And so you did return to Minnesota then to finish college.
Right. Yeah. Joyce had 1 quarter or something left, and I had 1. And so I graduated in January of 70.
Okay. So 71 or 72?
71.
71. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
And so now the Peace Corps comes in to this at some point as well. First off, tell us what the Peace Corps even is. A lot of people may not even know.
Well, back in let's see, when John F. Kennedy had his famous everybody knows, he said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Right.
With that, he established the Peace Corps.
Okay.
The Peace Corps is basically young. Well, it didn't turn out to be always young people, but people that would give a piece of their life to go overseas and try to make a difference in whatever position they found themselves in. They were usually 2-year stints. And so, yeah, it was, and when Joyce and I started first talking about jobs at that point in the Forest Service were really rare to get. It was one of those economic times that they didn't need foresters, and they weren't hiring. And so I was trying to figure out what to do. And we had both have a little bit of adventure in us. And she and I started talking about, would it be great to join the Peace Corps? And so we applied, and we got a telegram came to our house, I guess. And anyhow, they asked us, would we be willing to go to Liberia, West Africa? Well, they said Liberia, and Joyce right away, well, I did too, I think, probably thought there's Libya, but because we've never heard of Liberia.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, we decided that was what we wanted to do. And so we did it. So it went from a Minnesota cold, frigid winter to a hot, steamy jungle in right off the equator in Africa.
Right. In fact, I'm gonna just to show people where this is, I'm gonna actually share my screen briefly.
Okay.
And let me zoom out first so people can see. Of course, we're over this area, United States. And Liberia is on, as you said, the west coast of Africa.
Yeah, right in that little corner there. And
so Libya is way over there, but Liberia is down here.
Right. Yeah, totally different places, because we're in the hot, steamy, they call it the mosquito jungle. And it really was a wonderful experience. And if you see over there, right where it says Liberia, to to the right, there's a place called Zwedru.
Yeah, right here.
That's where we were stationed, and
you were stationed in this area.
Stationed in that area, and it says Tubman Palace and all those places in there. Anyhow, I was part of the first agriculture crew in the agriculture volunteer group in the Peace Corps in that area, and so I was given a pickup.
Yeah.
And my job was basically to be sort of like an agricultural extension agent, going out to different tribes and villages and talking to them about growing cocoa and coffee to get a cash, because they didn't have a cash income. So to get a cash income. And so my job was to make contact with the different villages, and basically about the size of probably Cowlitz and Clark County, and maybe Wakayakam together, somewhere in there, and very few roads. But and I had to, and this truck, I had to go 50 miles to get gas. So I had to carry barrels with me to get gas for a period of time. And one of the And Joyce, meanwhile, was placed at a mission school, and she was teaching school. And basically, a lot of her students were older than she was, but she was teaching junior high school. Yeah.
Interesting. That's fascinating.
And one of the most interesting things about the Peace Corps for us was that. Was that many times when I went into a village, I was the first white person they had ever seen. And I'm fair skinned too, on top of being it was just they didn't know what to make of me. So it was really an interesting thing to feel sort of that way. Put yourself in that position that it was so unusual. and I had aides that were with me that could speak all the dialects, so I didn't have a problem speaking to them. And the protocol,
communicating with them.
The protocol was, when you go to a village, you go to the chief first.
Oh, okay.
And then the chief there's some ceremonial things you do, and you snap fingers and do these strange Liberian handshakes and that they have. And I would quite often I'd come home with something, because the chief would always give me something. I'd come home with a chicken or some fruit, or one time he came with a monkey.
Are you serious?
With a monkey. The guys in the village had killed them, a mother died monkey, and so there's this little baby monkey that they gave me, and I brought it home, and that monkey took on Joyce as being the mother, and would ride around, grab her around the heel, and ride around on her foot all day.
Is that right?
Yeah, she was getting pretty annoyed at the monkey, and then we eventually got a dog, and then the monkey would ride around on the dog's back all day. But anyhow, the Peace Corps is, as they say, it's the greatest job you'll ever love. I mean, you love it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's what you make out of it too, because when they drop you off, it's entirely on yourself to be self-motivated and to develop your own program. So it taught me a lot about what I could do, and taught me about supervision and different things like that. Yeah.
Really so cool. This is a very different biome, compared to where like Minnesota, northern Minnesota. Was it did your training actually, was your training relevant to the work that you were doing, or did you have to learn a lot on the job?
Well, my title was tree crops expert.
Okay.
Obviously I wasn't an expert at cocoa and coffee.
Yeah.
But to them, I was, and for basic biology and
Mm-hmm.
what I needed to know to do the job, we were actually helping the villages set up small nurseries and we provided the seeds of cocoa and coffee to grow little seedlings so that they could plant them, and that was the whole program. Was that kind of outreach, and so
Okay.
yeah, I had everything I needed for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you were setting up greenhouses or
Setting up, not greenhouses in the respect that we have here, but
okay.
like bamboo and thatched
Oh,
things,
sure.
something for the
Yeah.
shade, and the containers are poly bags that have some holes in them and
Mhm.
native dirt.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Pretty simple. Yeah.
Pretty simple. And then we teach them how to plant them and where to plant them and things like that.
And how often to water and whatnot.
Actually, there was a co-op developed for that area so that when they did get to that stage of being able to pick and sell cocoa and coffee, that they had a place to sell it. The whole idea was to give them a cash income.
Right. Yeah. So they could grow their own sort of cash crops. Right. Have you been back since you left Liberia?
Yeah, I did. After we left, they went through an awful civil war.
I heard about that. Yep.
Awful civil war, and many of and it was kind of centered in the area that we were in.
Really?
I had a chance to go back on a mission trip with my brother-in-law Andy Candle, and it was incredible. Our place was, there was a UN food distribution thing. Our home was gone. Most of the places there were bombed out and gone. Nothing was the same. And there's very few, just a few people I could find that I knew. That most everybody had been killed in the war. And
are you serious? That's incredibly sad.
Yeah, it was something I wanted to do, but I knew it would be kind of tough.
Difficult. Yeah.
But the reason I wanted to go back is that they still were, some of those people were still in contact with us, and we didn't get to talk about it. But when we were in the Peace Corps, we were going to a native church there, and they found out that Joyce's dad was a minister, and they just wanted him to come. So anyhow, that set the stage for Andrew Michelson and Gus Candle going to Liberia, and Gus went there many times.
Was that the first time Gus had been there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is before this was kind of his venture into foreign missions.
Okay. Yeah. Cause I had heard that my great uncle, Gus Candle, Joyce's dad, was, he had gone to Africa many times. I didn't know how that started. So now I know the origin story.
That all started that way. And he was able to get Reverend Michelson to come along, who was the head of the Federation at that point. And we had just some great services, and so it made it even doubly sad when we did go back. The church was burned out, and everything was kind of sad. But we had some great moments revisiting with the few people we knew. Yeah.
Sure. Paul Kendall, by the way, says hi, Dan and Jamon.
Oh, hi.
Then you eventually returned to the US. And it says here that you worked for Weyerhaeuser in Kathleen, Washington.
Well, do you want to know why we came back to the US?
I want to know the background there.
We had a little problem. Well, it wasn't actually a problem. Joyce became pregnant.
Okay. Probably not the best place to be getting medical care there.
Having medical facilities.
Yeah.
So that was little Kevin coming along.
Okay. So he's been to Africa.
So Kevin he can call himself a real African American.
African American.
Because he is.
Yes. Indeed. So that was so you decided, okay, probably not the best place to be having a birth. So best to return to the US, and you went back to the Pacific Northwest then.
Yep. Then we didn't, we're kind of in square one. We got that little bit of experience. The Lord gave us a lot of opportunities there and we enjoyed it. And then it was, what do we do now?
Yeah.
I still had that dream. I wanted to get a Forest Service job. I wanted to work in the National Forest and that. So we went first of all to Grays River area and got a job in Warehouser. And obviously I knew and they knew I wasn't going to stay there for long. Yeah, that was a month. If you really, as soon as I got the call from the Black Hills National Forest for a temporary forest tech appointment, I went with that.
With that instead,
yeah, we went as fast as we could to the Black Hills.
So
not they didn't enjoy the logging part of it. All that, but
yeah, it's a very different life. Joseph Candle Weplo says hello from Mexico, and Faith Cantala says that she's watching, and my aunt Jerry Lynn Bergman says hi Dan, give my love to Joyce.
Well, hi to all those people. Yeah, Joseph in Mexico. Wow.
Yeah.
Joyce's brother.
Yeah.
So
that you got a job working in Wyoming. This is kind of interesting because you are just you are moving all over now to kind of follow these appointments. Now this says temporary, but it seems like you were there for a while.
Well, the way Forest Service jobs go, there's permanent appointments and temporary appointments.
Okay.
And until you get that permanent appointment, you can't really move within the system. It's up to you to find your job,
Okay.
And they may be 6-month appointments, they may be 1-year appointments, but so it was a matter of just finding a job. And so I got a job in Black Hills National Forest in Sundance, Wyoming. Mm-hmm. It's such a small place that on the front page of their newspaper, they put our picture.
It was a big news.
Welcome to Sundance, Wyoming.
Yeah.
And that happened.
What was your job title there?
Forestry technician.
Okay.
Yeah. That's basically the technicians are the ones that do the field work.
Okay. And when you say field work, what does a typical day look like?
Well, typical day in that area, I was on a timber crew, and basically you learn how to paint trees. You figure out which trees need to be cut in a thinning or that kind of thing. And you might be planting trees. You might be just a whole. All kinds of different jobs on the ground. Whatever needed to be done by the foresters, they ask you to do it.
Just sort of taking care of the national forest there.
Yep. Right. Right. Yep.
June White says hello from Maine as well.
Okay. Hi, June.
So you were there until March of 74. And it looks like it was Wyoming, but also Spearfish, South Dakota, Newcastle, Wyoming, and Custer, South Dakota.
Right, and the one I wanted to point out was when we first got there, I'd never been a fire lookout, but they asked me if I wanted to spend the summer in the lookout.
Okay,
I did, and so that's basically is on top of Warren Peak and in Wyoming, and
you're up on a tower
on top of the tower. Before the days when they nowadays they fly over a forest 2 or 3 times in a day during a bad fire session. Sure. But I was up there all summer, and come down in the evenings, of course, but Joyce and Kevin would come up there sometimes and stay with me. Yeah.
Okay.
And we had a couch and a refrigerator, and people would think that they just stayed there, but they were just up for the day,
Yeah.
And so that was fun. Yeah.
And you're just spotting and looking for smoke, basically.
Yep. Basically, that's your job. You have maps and things, and you're supposed to call smoke in as soon as you're sure. But a lot of times that's quite so easy, and you can see a plume of dirt coming up from a logging truck, and you call that in too fast, and it goes away. Then you feel like And then there's the next fire tower over in South Dakota is looking toward you too, and you don't want them to find a fire that's under your area. So
right,
you're on your toes all the time, and then during during a lightning storm, it was really cool to be up there. And you have to mark on the map where all the strikes are.
The strikes are,
so that the next day you can go back and have crews kind of patrol the area and look
for smoldering. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, most of those go out, but the ones that catch are the ones that are the problem.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to make a note here in my notes to ask you a question. Actually, I'll just ask you the question right now. Even though we're not really to that point, that's okay. I'll ask you right now. There in the news, there was sort of a few years ago, there was sort of I don't know if you'd call it a debate or something, but around managing forests and forest fires specifically. And, because there were so many fires down in California and whatnot. And I guess some of it was like, we need to take better care of our forests. And some people were saying we need to let fires go more. Some people say less. It's sort of like it almost becomes political at some point. But when you're in that forestry kind of that area, I assume that's something that you're dealing with is kind of
the whole probably last 20 years of my Forest Service time was mostly involved in forest politics. Yeah.
Okay. And so, forest politics. I did not expect to hear that phrase.
Well, that's what it is. I mean, the Forest Service back in the 90s was getting hit with lawsuits, and every timber sale we put up had a lawsuit on it, and there's injunctions. And for a while, the forests out west were so tied up, not just the spotted owl, but a lot of issues. Fires have become a big political issue too, because the more the Forest Service has gotten out of the ability to do the forest management, like thinnings and clear cuts and small cutting areas, the harder it is to keep the area clean so that you don't have the massive fires. The reason we have a lot of massive fires is that we are walking away from a lot of management. It's an overgrown thick forest, planted 30, 40, 50 years ago, needs thinning awfully bad, and a fire comes in there, and once it gets to the top of those trees and starts racing, there's no looking back.
Not much you can do then.
And it's so much hotter than it would have been in a small fires and less intensity. So it's been a huge problem. Part of the problem is always the knee jerking of Congress, that every time there's a problem, they throw money a certain way. and then they walk away from it. Okay, that's
handled now. They can claim victory then.
They can claim victory. But the problem I had every day at the Forest Service is that there's so many land management laws that we couldn't go do anything without breaking a law. And the way they were written was so vague that basically the Congress writes a law, they write it in a vague way, and they say, well, we'll let the courts figure that out. When it goes into a suit, then the courts can figure out what the proper balance is or anything. So that was the most frustrating part of the job, is the politics.
Yeah, I can imagine. I
mean, we'd have one side, we'll get to this later probably, but one side, the forest industry, and some really great people, and they really wanted the Forest Service to move along on things. And the other side, we'd have everything from the moderate environmentalists to the really extreme ones, the earth firsters, and the ones that would come in and paint our ranger station door with "Kill the Forest Service," and they'd tie themselves to our gates so that we couldn't open things up. They're sabotaging things all the time. It was a war. It really was a war. I lived through the timber wars. Is basically
Has it gotten better since then?
Oh, because Yeah, I guess it has in some ways because the Forest Service has been shackled so much from doing some of the things it could do that it really doesn't. It doesn't cause the excitement that it had before.
I see, but then they can't be as effective.
Right, and then our land management techniques can't be as effective.
Right.
Yeah.
Arvo.
I was going to just say that the most important tool that we can have to developing a healthy forest and also make them safer for fire, and that is a chainsaw. Yeah.
Really?
Using the chainsaw expeditiously is the best thing.
Yeah, and these big fires are pretty devastating. Now, there's some schools of thought around you got to let the fires go once in a while just to burn back the buildup of undergrowth and whatnot. But that's, I'm sure, a whole topic.
Yeah, we could go for hours on that because part of my job was always to develop a prescription for every stand that we cut. We had to write a prescription. That's why when we get into this silviculture institute stuff, I had to be certified as a silviculturist because anything that's cut on my district, I have to sign for it.
Really?
Write the prescription like it's a land managed prescription. And so it basically you have to be very careful what you're doing.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to get going more. One of the things I really enjoy about these interviews is getting people kind of going on what they're passionate about. And obviously that was something that you were for many years. So Arvo Ornama asks, very interesting listening. While in Liberia, Africa, did you two of you ever meet Larry and May Johnson, Lutheran Bible translators there for many years?
Yes, we did. We were good friends with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I am somewhat familiar with the Iron Range area in the Arrowhead County in Minnesota, having lived in Virginia for a while after coming to the U.S. from Finland in 1954 as an 18-year-old youngster. Anyway, sounds like Arvo has some background on that. So let's see here. So now, in this sort of march toward becoming a full-time forester,
right.
You had a little sideline and you joined the Air Force. Now, how did that come about?
Well, I knew that I couldn't stay getting temporary jobs forever. And the way the Forest Service hires professional foresters is you have to be on a civil service roster for that series, professional forester. And at that point, the best I could do the best I could do was 98 as a score, and they were hiring only the ones over 100 that had basically 100 is top, but if you have a veterans preference, you have 5 points added to that. So the only people that were getting jobs of that variety were veterans. So I decided that it was worth. I couldn't just do temporary jobs forever. So I thought, well, if I get my veterans preference, I'll pick up a job, and that's what happened.
So you were, by my calculations, right around 27 years old when you joined the Air Force.
Well, it's 26. I was
26. Okay.
I was the oldest person in boot camp.
Okay.
And they called me Methuselah.
That's pretty funny. And you joined to become a weatherman, and you were stationed. It says there were two different stations here. Chanute?
Chanute Air Force Base is where I took the weather training.
Okay.
In Illinois.
And then McCord.
That's where my son John was born.
Okay.
And then McCord was where I was stationed after the training, and
which is north of here.
That was a North American. That's a NORAD station. That was
okay.
The North American Radar Defense System, and basically I worked out of a concrete box that was bomb-proof in terms of a nuclear strike. We're in the middle of the Cold War, and basically the NORAD is in charge of scrambling planes and doing whatever for a defense system with the Russians.
Right.
And so that we're constantly doing weather updates for all the DEW line stations around the Arctic Circle,
Mm-hmm.
and then providing weather data for scrambling jets wherever we needed to. And so, yeah, it was kind of a weird thing whenever they had their war games. It's this huge interior. It looked like a modern day science fiction movie, but
yeah,
you go down there with my weather stuff, and there'd be a flash on the screen that Baltimore has just been eliminated, things like that. Yeah, that's
crazy. The Cold War.
The Cold War.
I feel like
something else.
The Cold War to me feels like something that a lot of people, who lived through it, don't even really like to talk about too much. They sort of forget that it ever happened. Just like, okay, it was fine, so we're just going to move on. But it was terrifying in some ways.
We were all expecting a nuclear war. Yeah.
My dad was in the Army around the same time as you.
Yeah.
72 to I think 75, if I have my math correct. So around the same time, and he was stationed in Germany, and I mean, where they were was like pretty much where the Russians would be rolling through with their tanks.
Yeah, ground zero.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was, but I liked the weather field, but basically I was a weather observer where we didn't have any windows out of it. Everything that came in, the weather data that came in was off teletype and things like that. And we'd develop our weather maps and things. And it wasn't until I got into the Air Force Reserves after I left the active Air Force that I was able to actually go outside and take all the data and put it up on the, send it out to everybody. And I was actually a weather observer then.
Yeah, right.
And part of that time was at the Portland airport, where we did provide briefings to pilots that were going out for the day.
Was that was when you were in the reserves?
That was later when I got out early because because they allowed me to, and I thought, well, this is an opportunity. I can get my 5-point preference, get a Forest Service job, and on my way. So I spent twice the amount of time I had left for actives in reserves, and so I just had to show up one weekend a month, and that was great.
It's kind of similar in some ways, I guess, to the Air National Guard, where you have the same cadence. Yeah.
Right.
And then that helped you then get your first permanent appointment as a forest technician.
Right. As soon as I got that preference, I started getting job offers, and I wasn't real picky. I was let's go. And so my first job then was as a forestry technician. It wasn't as a forester, but as a forestry technician. But it was a permanent job. It was. I didn't have. If I didn't want to leave, I didn't have to leave for the remainder of my career. So that took us to Libby, Montana, and I worked on a timber. In a timber organization. We did a lot of commercial timber sales and things like that in the Kootenai National Forest. It was good. It gave me another bunch of experience on the ground, honing my forestry skills and things like that, examining trees, cruising, just the basic forestry stuff. Yeah.
Let me pause you to ask another
Okay.
Just kind of ignorant question. So I have quite a few trees on my property, and there's a variety of different species. Are you at the point, I assume, where you can kind of just identify species just by looking at a tree? You kind of know exactly what it is, or like how good's your identification skills?
Well, they probably were pretty good. In forestry school, we had to identify species by the bud, not by the leaf or anything else. and sometimes it's through the taste test, sometimes just through the feeling, and sometimes the bark, or sometimes you get pretty good at it.
You get pretty good at it, yeah.
They're my babies.
Well, I've had to rely a little bit on now they have apps that you can take a picture and it'll tell you
Sure.
you know what kind it is. And I found out that something that I was, you know, thinking was something else. I have a bunch of giant sequoia on my property that my father-in-law John Matson planted. A bunch of Doug fir and then some like Leland cypress and some kind of California cedar. I don't remember exactly the name, but there's all these different kinds.
There's an incense cedar.
Incense cedar. That's the one. Yeah. So I've got a bunch of that on the property.
That's actually an Oregon tree too.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. Right. But
yeah, it said something about California incense. So I think that, that was what came up, but yeah.
No, that's so the Leyland cypress isn't native, but the other ones are.
Yeah. And of course the sequoia, not as well.
Down south further.
Yeah. Yep. And I've always felt like I guess maybe there's a part of me, I was always kind of interested in knowing what species each tree was. And I've tried to memorize, what's what. It's not like I don't have the training obviously to really identify, but it was very interesting actually also when we had that really hot summer, 2020 or 2021, 2020, I think. And it actually killed quite a few trees throughout the area, and to see how each tree kind of handled the heat. Sequoias didn't have a problem, but there were others that died.
Well, during that really heat, it was kind of off the subject. But when it was 100 and 17?
Somewhere in that, yeah.
In our back of our place, there's some bigger trees and that, and I could actually hear the water vapor busting and popping limbs. It was so hot. It was popping the limbs. The only other time I ever heard that was when it was extremely cold, and the cold was causing interior explosions in the tree. So yeah, it was pretty wild.
That is, it was absolutely wild. That's something I'll remember the rest of my life. Just that incredible heat that we had here. And just for those of you who don't live in the Pacific Northwest, 115 or whatever we ended up hitting was well above. I mean, we're talking over 10 degrees higher than anything we'd ever seen at that point in the year.
Every tree and shrub that has a native has a range of requirements, and you can only push a tree so far. And
you drive down the street and there'd just be orange limbs, where they had burned them,
scorching them, like you took
scorched.
Yeah.
So that was sort of like part of it was an interesting thing that I think relates to what you've done. So you were in Libby, Montana as a forest technician. Mm-hmm. And then actually that same year, then you you switched to professional forester.
Yep. So at that point, my goal still wasn't there. I wasn't a professional forester on the career path that I wanted. And so I was watching the openings and openings came up for forester, and so I put in for it, and I got it, because now it's part of the system. Now it's based on, can you do the job, and a best person for it, and mm-hmm. so I got a job, and I happened to get that my first professional forestry job right back in my home city of Grand Rapids, Minnesota. Right back at the North Central Forest Experiment Station, and even though they had nothing to do with the type of job I was doing, it was sort of like it came full circle. It took me from, I got out of high school in '66. It took me till October '76 to get my appointment, mm-hmm. But I was ready to go.
That's amazing.
And I had all this experience that God had given me.
Yeah,
dealing with all kinds of people and all kinds of terrain, and I was just ready for it.
That's amazing.
Basically, the job there was very interesting. Under one of the forest acts, it says that the government is supposed to examine the forests of the U.S. once every 10 years. So We had a bunch of folks, so we worked in two-person crews, and we would go around to spots in northern Minnesota and the UP of Michigan, and do plots measuring trees and for this report for assessing the health of the forest.
Yeah. That's super interesting that ended up being your first professional forester post was right back there. Were there still people there that you knew?
Oh yeah.
In that station?
Yeah.
Okay, very, very cool.
Most of them.
Yep.
Those scientists, they die in place.
So that must have been kind of cool for them to see, they knew you as kind of a kid.
Yeah, they were
for you coming back.
So they knew that. Yeah. And
yeah.
that was really, really nice. And but the job then was so neat because I got to travel all over. You never in the same place twice. So what they do is they take aerial photographs of the main station, and there's a pinprick on it, and that pinprick, the crew goes out and finds where that canopy of that hole is on that photo, and you take a series of 10 measure 10 plots based going around.
Okay.
In an area, and from that they put it into a big old system, and they evaluate what the forests are like. But anyhow, so some of it was on private land. We'd have to get permission to go on. Some of it was on state land, some of it was on county, but for the most part it was on Forest Service.
Mm-hmm. And from that they can get a snapshot of the health of the forests and whatnot.
Right. Yeah.
So that was the forest survey, and that was Minnesota, North Dakota, and Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
So in that particular job that I worked on, the Chippewa National Forest and Superior National Forest, the Ottawa National Forest, the Hiawatha National Forest, and for that job.
Yep, gotcha. And you were able to live in Grand Rapids. Did you have family in Grand Rapids still?
Well, we lived about half the time in Grand Rapids, and we moved to Scandia, Michigan, which is outside of Marquette in the UP.
Okay.
So we lived in two different places.
Okay. Yep. So then transferred to Silver Lake Ranger District in Fremont National Forest. Let's see, is that California then?
No, that's in Oregon.
Where's Fremont? I'm sorry.
Fremont National Forest is based out of Lakeview, but it's a huge national forest in Oregon.
Oh, in Oregon. Okay.
Yeah.
And what is a silviculturist?
Well,
I can't even say it.
Silviculturist. That's the art and science of growing a forest. Basically, it's a forest scientist.
Okay.
With a bent toward not research but practical on the ground stuff. Yeah. So anything dealing with the forest is in the realm of silviculture. What makes the forest tick?
Interesting. That is really fascinating.
I've loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. That was Silver Lake Ranger District. You were there for a while, and then when it says transferred, you decided to transfer or you were transferred?
Yeah, right. Well, you have to remember Silver Lake Ranger District was in the desert part of Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And Joyce, she was happy to be there, but after 2 years, she wanted to see something green again. Silver Lake, there wasn't a lake. It's an old lake bed.
Okay.
The Fremont National Forest, the Silver Lake District, is mostly ponderosa and lodgepole pine country.
Okay.
And really interesting, great ecosystem, but it wasn't. And the outpost is so remote that it's 80 miles to go shopping in Bend to get food.
Oh wow!
So it wasn't a place that we wanted to stay forever.
Sure.
Although some people, their lifestyle is that this is the place.
That's the best. Yeah.
So we were looking to. I transferred to the Applegate because we wanted to have a place where the kids could grow up, go to school. At that time. They went to started in the little Silver Lake school, but Medford was where the kids really started their education.
And that was Applegate Ranger District,
Right.
Rogue River National Forest, I'll get this eventually. Silviculturist and supervisory forester. And you were there for quite a while then.
Yeah, for 8 years. And
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. The Applegate district is actually 1/3 of it's on the California side.
Oh, okay.
So, and it ranged all the way down from about 500 feet in elevation all the way up to 6,000 feet. And so lots of really rugged. The Siskiyou Mountains are incredibly rugged and beautiful. And I really like the job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so again, my job there was there's a lot of field work to it, but then there's starting to be a lot of supervision, at that point in my career. And so that's where things started. I became much more comfortable leading groups and doing things like that. And
right.
Just sort of a progression that you go through as a professional.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So you had,
and the biggest thing for that was the biggest thing there was it gave me an opportunity to go to Oregon State and to University of Washington to get the equivalent of a master's degree as a certified silviculturist. And then after you do the classwork, then you go before a panel and you have to defend a prescription that you've done.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So you defend a prescription. So based on what you've told me so far, a prescription is sort of an order to do something with trees or something along those lines?
Yeah, well, it's just like a doctor's visit. What's the current condition of the land that you're looking at? Snapshot. What should it look like?
Yeah.
How do we get there?
Yeah.
And, that whole process.
I see.
And basically, as a silviculturist, you're never thinking about 2 years out. Most of my thinking is 50 to 100 or more years out.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So tell me if you can, the difference between thinking 2 years out versus thinking 100 years out. Like what types of decisions are you making differently, or maybe observations you're trying to make that would be different than just thinking, shorter term like that?
Well, for one thing, you don't think in terms of one activity is going to be the end of it. It's sort of like a series of activities and things you need to do on a piece of land. It might be this year we plant trees because it was just clear cut.
Sure.
And we have laws that state that within 5 years it has to be free to grow. That means that if you walk away from it, it'll grow up into those trees.
Yeah.
But in the old days, we didn't plant a variety of trees. It's just mostly Douglas fir, or in a lot of cases, just ponderosa.
Because Douglas fir it has such commercial use.
Right. And so what my challenge was is I had to think in terms of how do I develop this particular open piece of ground into something that has diversity and species, diversity and spatially, with not trees planted all in one a distance apart, but providing habitat for a lot of different things, because that's what the Forest Service is. It's not industrial forest land. It's keeping healthy forests, and so my job is to think about that.
That's very interesting. So you have to be thinking about the wildlife, bears and deer and elk and all these things, plus all the small things, insects. And
after when the timber wars kind of shut us down for a while, remember Clinton came out with this Clinton's forest plan or the forest plan. I don't know if
vaguely I remember. Anyhow,
that was the way to get the Forest Service on the west side of the Cascades moving again. And they had in that document, they had a list of hundreds of species of concern. These were scientists that looked at these forests and said, we really don't know much about them, and we need to find out more about them so that we don't hurt them when we're managing for them.
Right.
Well, part of those, they developed some criteria for measuring. And so we'd have different areas that we'd have to go in and with flashlights and look under logs for slugs and snails and different things.
Yeah.
I got these big brawly timber guys, using flashlights in the darkest part of the forest, looking under logs and that for little things that you have to really, in order to identify, you have to use a hand lens to figure out what they are. So
wow.
It was, that's just an example, but it forced us to look at a lot of things.
Yeah.
Not just the trees, but a lot of things.
Were there any parts of this that you would get into a little more dangerous situations, or was it generally speaking a fairly safe thing that you were doing?
In terms of danger for the public?
Just danger for you, when you're out there kind of like roaming through the forest doing various things. Is it relatively safe, or do you have to be on the watch for, predators and things like that?
Well, we, once in a while we'd have an incident where we're marking timber in an area and a mama bear would be there, and where the mama bear is, so you go watch out because the baby bear is there too, and they like it, and so things. Did
like you carry a firearm?
No.
So just had to watch out. Yeah.
So no, I felt really comfortable and almost, except for the steep. Sometimes the most dangerous part is you in some of the areas you have such steep ground that if you make a misstep, you're gonna be going down the hill for 100 feet or so. And there's a few times I went down those chutes and I thought, well, I don't think this is going to feel too good at the end here. And you just hope there's not a pile of rocks at the bottom that you're going to be landing on.
Right. Yeah. No kidding.
But I felt really good out in the woods. I never did feel afraid.
Yeah. So you were then promoted to staff supervisory forester, district zone silviculturist. See, I told you I'd get that. And that was in the Siuslaw. Is that how you say it? Siuslaw National Forest. Where's that?
That's where Florence, Oregon is.
Yes. In fact, I remember, did we visit you as a family? I remember going to Florence.
Probably did.
Seeing you and your family around this time, it must have been.
Yeah. The Siuslaw National Forest is the smallest of the 11 national forests in Oregon.
Okay.
It's like 800,000 acres or something like that.
But,
and it's the most productive one in the U.S. It's the highest productive forest in the U.S. And so when I had an opportunity to go there as a supervisor and as a zone silviculturist, and so I thought, boy, it's really a great place to be.
Yeah.
It changed so much. I mean, that's when the timber wars hit. I got there at the end of the old system. Mm-hmm. My planting program when I got to the Mapleton, we were planting over 1,000 acres a year, and I was planting over 1 million trees every spring.
Yeah,
and just really going gangbusters on that kind of forest management. Well, that slowly slid to a stop, and we had to move out to do other things. But the Siuslaw has not only the productive forest land, but it has the Oregon Dunes, natural, or the recreation area that's right along the coast from Florence to Coos Bay.
Right.
And so I had the opportunity to manage the Oregon Dunes for.
So that's even yet another sort of like type of biosphere there. Like you're
it's totally
in the dunes. Yeah.
Totally different. That's the whole thing is set aside for recreation, but then there's a lot of habitat in there too.
Sure.
I'm sure you probably were down there with an ATV or something like that.
I've done my share. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. But you obviously had to stay out of certain areas.
We had to stay out of certain areas, but I did, go through some interesting times there. We didn't have curfews at one point, and so people would be riding their ATVs all hours of the day, and neighbors that lived in that area, we get a lot of complaints that sleep at night. There's no, you got to do something. So one July 4th weekend, I actually went out with the mayor, and we after midnight just to get a feel for what he's hearing or they're hearing, and we eventually came to the point where there's a curfew of 10 o'clock for most things, and because kids get these kids on these things, and they'll go all night long, and and that unfortunately was when we had most of the accidents. Every year there was somebody would get killed going up over a dune. You don't see what's on the other side. You land right on top of somebody else. So it was great.
And I know man, I have a lot more questions for you, Dan, but we are pushing time here, so I want to make sure that we get to some other stuff here. Watershed team leader, noxious weed coordinator. That's something we have to watch for certain, specifically more the tansy ragweed we have to watch for around here. And you also went up to British Columbia to advise as well up there.
Right. Yeah, that was a real neat opportunity to get selected and go up there as a riparian silviculturist, and we'd fly into different areas and look at some of their watershed projects, and I'd give them my opinions on things, and we'd maybe write up a report and something. But really neat to get rides in a bush plane, and you go into some really remote country, and it's cool. Yeah. So I was thrilled. The thing I didn't enjoy as much is that I had to do some presentations, at the University of British Columbia and some of the other universities and other things, but that was part of the job.
So when you're driving, let's say that you're driving down the Columbia River Gorge or something like that, are you looking at stuff and just kind of giving a little bit of your professional eye, like, oh, this needs to be managed a little differently?
Well, the gorge is really different because I mean, no matter what happens, you can't really do anything in it.
Oh, I suppose, but I mean, just anywhere. Let's say that you're just driving through a forest.
You're right. I can't drive through a forest without thinking about
picking it up.
but it's mostly like looking at the trees and the ones that are there, appreciating what's there.
That's true.
Mostly what I do. But I could always pick apart some land management stuff.
Sure. Hard to turn it off, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And we'll go a little bit faster through this. You, for it looks like around 9 years, you left the Forest Service in September of 2004, and then from that point until 2013, you owned and operated a dwarf conifer nursery called Conifer Kingdom. Or is it conifer? What do you?
Conifer,
in Florence.
2Ks, in retrospect, I think I left the Forest Service a little too early, but I was 57. I had 35 years of government service. I couldn't get my pension any higher than it was. And I felt like maybe I wanted to walk out when I was really on top of it. I had the best job in the world as the zone silviculturist, the supervisory forester, area ranger. Anything I wanted to do, basically, I could do, and it was. But I felt like I needed to see what else I could do, so I did. I walked away from it. Somebody said at my retirement, "How in the world did 57 years old did you get 30 some years of experience?" I said, "Well, first job you get out of high school, and it all counted. Even those who were small jobs, every day you were on that job counted." So sticking with the U.S. government really made the difference for me and allowed me to do what I did. But in retrospect, I think I would have probably enjoyed staying at the Forest Service another 5 years, probably.
Sure. Yeah. It makes sense though. And I'm sure you had some good times operating the nursery as well, and putting your knowledge of plants to good use there.
The main thing though is I was just getting kind of burnt out on the politics.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
everything is just it's just
that's yeah,
you just can't win.
And then you essentially retired then in 2013 and moved to Ridgefield, Washington, which is that still where you live today? Yep. And then of course you it says here that you play with your backyard plants, so you're still involved in that. Grandkids, now great grandkids, and traveling as well. So that's all really interesting stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, we've been blessed doing a lot of traveling. We've seen all the 50 states, and we've seen a good bunch of the world now, and going to Israel in March. And yeah, it's just
that's cool.
It's a neat phase in our life that we're looking forward to every day.
Well, thanks so much, Dan, for going through. I know there's more to this. There's more to your story. People will have to ask you when they see you questions and whatnot. It's very fascinating. It's something that is interesting to me. Like I said, that just the idea of having these forests that have to be managed, and how that all comes about, and the types of things that you have to do there. And the fact that you manage many different types. I mean, everything from in Africa, northern Minnesota, the dunes, of course, different types of forests in Montana and the Dakotas and everywhere.
Yeah, the thing I really loved about the Forest Service is that there's 154 national forests in the U.S. and I can go anywhere. And I can still walk into any office and tell them I'm a retired Forest Service guy, and they'll open up their doors. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a great place to work. Don't be afraid of some fire, because fire is part of the thing.
Managing the fires, actually that is something that I wanted to ask you before we go. It sounds like you would wholeheartedly recommend this career path to younger people who might be looking at
yeah, definitely. I look back and think of what a blessing I've had my whole life to do something I wanted to do, and I would not have thought I wouldn't have been able to plan the route that God had for me, but yet I wouldn't change it for anything.
That's amazing. I think we'll leave on that. A bunch of people saying thank you. It was very interesting in the chat here. Linda, Chuck Waldall, Gail, Phyllis Sikla, Wilfred and Phyllis are watching. Appreciate that. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in as well. Might be a couple of, I don't know exactly. I'm going to be, actually, my wife and I are going to the UK actually for a work trip, and we'll spend a little bit of time there for our 19th anniversary as well. So I will not be doing streaming until the next time. I've got a few more interviews potentially lined up. Thanks so much, Dan. Really appreciate it. This is super interesting.
You're welcome. Yeah. Bye-bye.
All right.